Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Hi, I can hear you. I can hear
Thank you. I'm glad. Hi, Ray. Hi, Elfrida. Hi, Janie.
How you doing, Eric?
Doing fine, thank you.
Hey, can you all hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Great. Good to see y'all this evening.
My watch says we've got about 2 minutes to 6. Does that sound about right?
Yep, that's what I have.
Excellent. Janie, who are we not expecting to see tonight?
Carl.
Just Carl?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Do we have a quorum with me, Ray, Elfrida, and Charity?
Yes. And I'm sure Bill will be getting on soon. I know he has.
Okay. Oh, okay, good. So you heard from Bill.
Yes. And I see Paul is on the call too. I didn't know if we wanted to address last month's, because I know I called you and talked to you on the phone about it
Yeah, I think I'm clear.
correctly.
We'll follow the steps you recommended, and we'll just call the meeting to order, and then we'll talk about the agenda.
All right.
And I now have 6 o'clock, and it's time to convene the March 6th, 2023 Town of Pittsboro Planning Board regular meeting. And I welcome everyone. We're going to have to call for an adoption of, or rather a modification of the agenda. So I will move that we modify the agenda as it was in your printed packet. Do I have a second? Because we have to revisit a vote we made last month. May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Number 3.
Thank you, Elfrida. Thank you. We need to re-vote the 2 items that we voted on in February, because Elfrida was having difficulty with her internet connection, and we could not hear her verbally affirm the 2 items we voted on last month. Janie, do you want to just give a quick summary of what it is we're re-voting on?
Yeah, and it's 3 items. So one of them was the Corbett Landing preliminary plat modification, which that's actually already been approved by the Board of Commissioners, but we'll just include it just to be consistent with the rest of them. The other one is the Northwood Phase 3 major subdivision, which was the 29 plus acres into 10 lots. And then the Grantham conditional rezoning, which was to a multifamily residential district on 79.06 acres. I'm having issues pulling up the files, but if you need me to, I can show you them. The vote again for the Grantham rezoning will be for a consistency statement, and then Northwoods will be for approving the preliminary major subdivision plat, and Corbett Landing will be for approving the modification of the plat. And again, the modification is they have 3 approved entrances into the development, and it's 115 lots. And one of those entrances is emergency access only, and it's going to be gated. That's to remain. And then they had 2 entrances pretty close to each other, and there are some issues with the developer, and then also with NCDOT, and not the fire marshal, but NCDOT had issues with the site distance, and they said they were fine with the middle one or the northernmost one being removed. And fire marshal was also okay with that.
Thanks, Janie. Last month, we had approval of the board members on the call, but we couldn't hear Alfreda's response, which is why we're redoing it. So we're going to need to revote. Can we revote these as a package, just all three, since they have been previously unanimously approved?
I think it's cleaner just to do them each separately. If there's not going to be any discussion, it's probably just going to take just as long because there's not a consistency statement for the plat. Right. And there's really nothing with the the major modification to the preliminary plat. So they're all kind of different actions.
Okay. Well, do you want to call them out, and then I'll call for a motion to approve, and we'll vote them. So the first one.
Well, and I think Paul has unmuted himself. So
yeah, Paul, please weigh in.
No, I think Janie's right. I think you ought to vote on them separately.
Okay, very, very good. That's what we'll do. So, Janie, if you'll call off the first one, then I'll ask for a motion to approve.
Sure. So the first one will be Corbett Landing preliminary plat modification to remove one of the entrances.
And can I have a motion to approve, please?
Also motion.
Thank you, Ray. Let's vote on this. All in favor? May I hear aye?
Aye.
All right. I heard Alfreda that time, so we've got a unanimous vote to approve.
Eric, you
yes,
still you did a motion, but you didn't do a.
Oh, second. I'm sorry. We didn't. I beg your pardon. I moved.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Alfreda. And now we shall vote. All in favor? Aye.
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 Charity, are you an aye?
Well, I wasn't here for the February meeting, so I'm unsure if I should be voting or not.
I can pull it up because we still sent out the packets to everyone.
Gotcha.
So,
okay, then I will vote as well.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
So we have, so thank you, Charity. So we have a unanimous approval on the Corbett Landing modifications. Next from our Golden Hits archive, Janie.
The next one will be the Northwood Phase 3 major subdivision preliminary plat, and again, that's on 29 acres. It's, you know, previously approved development, just subdividing more land for individual development. So 29 acres into about 10 or 29 plus acres into 10 lots.
So do I have a motion to approve?
I make a motion we approve.
Thank you, Alfreda. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor of approving the modification to the Northwood residential subdivision? Aye.
Aye.
Are there any dissenters? And so it passes unanimously. And our final item to revisit from last month is Janie, call it out. We've got to do this next one as a consistency statement and then an approval, correct?
You can just do you can do that all in one. You can do the consistency and the approval, as long as it's reflected in the minutes correctly.
Okay.
The last one is a request for the Grantham property. Let me make it better so I can actually give you a parcel number at least.
Yes.
To rezone parcel 74820, owned by the Grantham Family LLC. It's a request by GE Chatham to rezone it from RA2 to multifamily residential conditional zoning district for single family dwellings, townhomes, multifamily, duplexes, parks and rec.
So may I have a motion to approve?
I make a motion we approve.
Thank you, Alfreda. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Ray. So we'll call this to a vote. All in favor, aye.
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 All opposed? So this passes unanimously. So now we get into the agenda as it was printed and distributed. And so the next item of business is the approval of our January minutes and the acknowledgement that there's going to be a modification to the February minutes, I guess, retrospectively, or do we leave them as they are, Janie?
Well, I think it's just going to be easiest to leave them as they are, and then
Okay.
we'll just reflect it in these
We'll
minutes,
reflect-
your
we'll-
changes,
okay.
and refer to them, and it'll kind of be a
All right, thank
dual
you.
duty.
So everyone has received the minutes for January and February. Does anyone see anything that needs to be modified, clarified, corrected? If not, I'll call for a motion to approve the minutes for our January and February meetings as they were distributed to you.
I make a motion we approve the minutes.
Thank you, Alfreda. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Ray. All in favor of approving the minutes from January and February? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. There being no opposition, we'll approve the minutes unanimously. So moving into new business, we have two items tonight. The first is a preliminary plan for Chatham Park Section 7.1 Residential Subdivision Phase 2, which is PB 2022-101. And Molly, I guess you're presenting and you have control of the screen.
All right, thank you very much. I'll go ahead and share my screen and go ahead and get this pulled up. All right, can everybody see the presentation okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, good evening, everybody. Molly Boyle, Planning Project Manager. I'm going to briefly present the staff analysis for the Section 7.1 Residential Subdivision Phase 2. This is in Chatham Park. And after that, I'll open the floor for questions. The applicant is on the call, so they can answer any of those questions for you. So to start with the overview, this is a major subdivision preliminary plat because it proposes more than 5 lots. And it's in Section 7.1 of the Chatham Park Plan Development District. So this is in the northernmost part of the Chatham Park Plan Development. It's most commonly associated with Mosaic. And in a little bit, I'll show you a vicinity map, give you a better idea of where this is located. And so since this is in the Chatham Park Plan Development District, of course, it has to adhere to the master plan and the additional elements, and also the North Village Small Area Plan. So the parcels proposed for subdivision are 7101 and 60745. And again, I'll show you the vicinity map in a minute, show you where those are at. And the applicant's proposing to subdivide a little more than 33 acres to create 70 single-family lots. And the median lot area for those lots is about 6,600 square feet. So here's that vicinity map here. And the project area is this block in red. So we have Hillsborough Street in 15501. Mosaic is up here. This is the Malott properties. We've done a lot with Malott over the past couple months, so you'll recognize those. So here's Suttles Road, and this is Grant Drive coming in through here. And so this whole block here is actually residential subdivision 7.1. You may remember in the past, there was the first phase of this subdivision was reviewed and approved. It's already been through planning board and through BOC. So this is the second phase of that subdivision. The applicant's requesting water from the town of Pittsboro, and wastewater is going to flow to the Chatham Park Water Recovery Center. And in terms of open space and parkland, based on the number of lots required, the applicant's required to provide 2.8 acres of parkland and 0.7 acres of open space. And they're providing more than enough open space, just under 7 acres. So that's about 20% of the phase. And they're proposing parkland offsite. And also Chatham Park is currently in a surplus of parkland. So by that, I mean that they have set aside more parkland than they need to based on the number of lots they've proposed so far. For access and parking, the project has access to both Grant Drive and to Suttles Road. So if you remember in the UDO, there's that requirement. If you have the subdivision that's more than 50 lots, you have to have 2 points of access. You have to have a secondary emergency access. So this meets that requirement with access to Grant and to Suttles. The internal subdivision streets are going to be 27-foot wide travelways and 55-foot rights of way. And each lot is going to have 2 parking spaces, and that meets the Chatham Park parking and loading element. And finally, staff reviewed this for consistency with Pittsborough's long range plans. So your comprehensive transportation plan, the bike and ped plan, and the Parks and Rec master plan. And we found that it's consistent with all of those. And with that, I will go ahead and open the floor to questions.
You're on mute, Eric. Still on mute.
All right.
There you go.
All right, thank you. Yeah, the little icon didn't pop up. Okay, there being no questions, may I have a motion to either approve or deny the preliminary plan for Chatham Park, section 7.1?
I make a motion that we approve the plans.
Thank you, Elfrida. Do I have a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Charity. Now, all board members in favor, please give us an aye.
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 Thanks very much. And all opposed, if any? There being no opposition, the matter passes unanimously. Now we come on to that beautiful 61-page volume that Steve distributed to us last week, and it proved to be interesting weekend reading for me. I'm sure it was for you as well. And we'll turn it over to Ms. Phelps for the explanation and the opportunity to raise questions about the Pittsboro Land Use Plan update.
No.
My turn to
Okay.
tell you to unmute.
I'm good now. So anywho, our consultant, Jake Petrosky with Stewart Inc. is on the call, as well as Meg Nealon, who's been helping and assisting with updating the plan. And they actually have a beautiful presentation to give you all. And I know Jake is a panelist, so he should be able to share his screen, or Jake, if you need me to, and to go through the slides. Just nope, you got it.
Well, I don't know how beautiful it is, but it is a presentation. So can you all see?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for having me, all. This is about the future land use plan we've been working on with staff. I want to talk a little bit about just the project in general, what it means to you all in the town, a little bit about what we heard in terms of analysis and input, and then also some recommendations that we have in the plan. Introduce you to your consulting team, me and a couple other folks at Stewart, and then Meg Nealon, who's also on the call as well. We really enjoyed working through this with staff and in the steering committee. I want to especially thank staff for coordinating all the meetings that we've had in terms of public meetings and steering committee meetings, and getting the word out about the survey and that sort of thing. And then also want to extend a thank you to the steering committee members as well. Charity has been on there, and a number of other folks that, we had a lot of night meetings, and some of them were kind of long, and we had a lot to talk about because this plan is pretty foundational. I mean, it's really looking at the next 10 or 20 years of the town. So there was a lot to talk about. So I do want to give a special thank you to the steering committee members for committing their time and attention to this over the last 8 months or so. The steering committee, the schedule, we started in June, and had a lot of analysis and a tour and that sort of thing for student committee, the engagement analysis. A key part of that was the survey, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and also the stakeholder interviews. The plan development part of this really began in the fall, where we drafted recommendations and a future land use map, and had a community open house to review the draft recommendations and land use map. And then we put it in this document that you all have seen as the product of this. And I'm trying to distill everything into a manageable amount of slides for you. So I'm going to kind of go pretty quick and talk about the highlights of it. If you have some questions about individual things, feel free to bring those up at the end. So a land use plan, first of all, it's long range. It looks at the 10 or 20 year time frame where we want to be in 10 or 20 years, while recognizing some of the constraints and issues that we're dealing with and have to overcome. It does provide guidance in terms of land use and intensity and design of things. Provide guidance for staff and programs, infrastructure investment, because you all know with sewer capacity limitations that you'll have had, we can't serve the world with a high level of service. So it's important to understand where we can serve. It's collaborative. It's really meant to be a community conversation that occurs periodically and we kind of talk about where we are and where we want to go. It is policy. It's not regulatory. This plan does not amend the zoning ordinance, the UDO or the zoning map or anything like that. But it can lay the groundwork, and we do make some suggestions in the plan about how you could potentially make your UDO work better for you, and also where to encourage some rezonings and that sort of thing. So it does provide some guidance, but it doesn't amend the zoning ordinance. So a little bit on the analysis and input side. I mean, we looked at existing plans, ordinances, demographics. You all had pretty steady population growth that is expected to continue and accelerate over the next coming years. So it's a really important part is to plan, is to really think about where we want to be in 10 or 20 years. And that's, a fundamental thing of what we've done here. The last plan is quite dated. The last plan was in 2012, and we really didn't even know the scope of Chatham Park in 2012. We kind of knew that it was coming and roughly, where it was, but not really what it was or the full extent of it or anything that has basically been clarified over the last 10 years. So it was time to do a plan. Community engagement was really important. We had a strong level of participation in the survey, over 500 responses. It was rankings, multiple choice. Priorities that came out of this: improvement of utilities and infrastructure was number 1 priority. Environmental protection and conservation was number 2 priority. Preservation of character was also important in growth management. Some of those things are interrelated. When we talk about new neighborhoods, we ask what makes a quality neighborhood? What do you want to encourage more of? And number 1 was access to walking trails, greenways, parks, and green space. Number 2, sidewalks and crosswalks. Number 3 was interesting, but a mix of unit types for different households, different ages and backgrounds. So as you all, a planning board, these are the kinds of things that you want to see in new development. And you all can kind of, work with the development to get more of this. If there is a conditional zoning or something like that, you have influence on in terms of getting more of this stuff in new development. That's something that the survey says that citizens would support. Public open house, some of the key themes from the open house: balanced growth, tax base, jobs. You don't have a lot of high-paying jobs in Pittsburgh, which is something. Aging population and not a lot of high-paying jobs. So understanding where we can grow the tax base, supporting downtown, growing downtown was important. Geographic balance. You know, we have a lot of growth on the east side due to Chatham Park, but let's talk about some balance, balancing some of the growth patterns of it. Trail connections downtown to the Haw River and south. Downtown, there was a lot of conversation about this. You know, a lot of people love the downtown. They want to see it made more pedestrian friendly with wider sidewalks, better crosswalks, additional signage, better access to parking and public bathrooms, you know, these sorts of things. So we did capture some of that in the recommendations. There are 6 main goals that really guide this plan. We really whittled the focus of this plan down significantly from the 2012 plan to really focus on lane use. And one is grow strategically by investing in infrastructure and facilities that improve quality of life. Collaboration is another one, because you got some big issues that are coming and you can't deal with it alone, right? So coordination with county, the state and regional agencies is going to be really important when it comes to utilities and transportation. Supporting that vibrant, energetic downtown, creating opportunities for creativity, creative placemaking, entrepreneurship, innovation, and the arts. You are an arts destination, so supporting that. Balancing the preservation of existing neighborhoods with the need to increase and diversify housing opportunities. There's a lot of opportunity for the town of Pittsburgh to accommodate growth that's coming to Chatham County, and arguably, you know, it should go to towns and not outside in the county rural areas to protect agricultural, natural resources, and all that. So you all have a role to play moving forward, but we also want to balance some, you know, existing neighborhoods and not impact them negatively. So that's important. Protecting natural resources was also a big part of this, and I'll talk a little bit more about each of these things when we get into the plan recommendations. So going into the plan elements, the recommendations are broken into 4 different categories: lane use and housing, downtown, infrastructure, and natural resources and conservation. The lane use plan itself, the future lane use map, is a really important part of this document. It updates your lane use plan significantly, because, you know, the old land use plan, it was hard for staff to use because so much has happened in the last 10 years. So this updates that. It kind of has a number of different character areas that are described in the plan and talk about what kinds of uses we want to see, what are some of the shared design characteristics, level of density or intensity. And there's some flexibility here. It is anticipated that there's going to be a number of zoning districts in each of these. So it's not necessarily a 1-for-1 to zoning, but it does lead the way and should really guide rezoning decisions, development design, and that sort of thing. So briefly, in the center, you see the town center, and that's your core, your downtown area, and your downtown support area. Outside of that, this is where we want to see some infill and redevelopment where it makes sense, preserve historic features, that sort of thing, but provide some flexibility and use in those areas, because those are you know, some really great opportunity areas for infill. The traditional neighborhood and infill, the orange category, is kind of a medium to higher density residential development. These are areas that are already slated for this type of development through Chatham Park approval, or other areas that are just really well located, adjacent to planned mixed-use activity centers where we want to see some commercial growth and that sort of thing that could support some additional residential. More residential areas are in yellow, and then the rural conservation design is more lower density overall, although you could see a mix of development there. Employment mixed use is something that we wanted to identify opportunities for jobs at non-residential development, and some of those are planned as part of Chatham Park, but some are just areas where you have a lot of existing uses that are compatible with that, or some opportunity and not a lot of conflicts. The area that is employment TND, that is a striped area that is purple or blue for employment mixed use and TND. These are areas like around the plant and also out near 64 East, where it could go either way. You know, we can let the market decide whether it can sustain some employment or some office or light industrial uses, or whether you know, something that is more medium to higher density residential is appropriate, as long as it's designed okay. So that's kind of a big picture look at this. You can see that there's also some new roadways shown on here. And as part of the plan, we did want to take the old comprehensive transportation plan that was done back in 2012 or thereabouts and update it based on some changes that we knew were already kind of in the works or approved through Chatham Park's recent plans, so that we could have a map that reflected the lane use and then also our roadway plans. So that's an important part of this. You can see that so the purpose of this lane use map, it provides general lane use guidance. It should identify the intended development pattern, like where things are more less density and more density, commercial mixed use areas. Policy is policy, not regulatory, but it should influence regulatory changes. It should be used to influence development design. It should guide rezoning decisions, and it should guide investment, infrastructure investment decisions as well. So that's kind of what this is meant to be used for. And you know, every rezoning, there's a consistency statement that staff produces, and it will reference policies in this plan and will reference this map. And one of the things that we wanted to do was talk about these character areas a little bit. They're explain the look and the feel of these different areas. There is some flexibility, but it's definitely been updated to reflect kind of what we're thinking, as opposed to the 2012 plan. So it should be easier for staff and you all to determine consistency compared to the old plan. And again, there could be multiple zoning districts within each of these, and we do specify where there's some updates to the zoning code that could be useful. So a couple lane use and housing recommendations: focusing growth near infrastructure and walkable to commercial and services. Big picture, those are some of the things that we want to do. So walkability was really important. We heard a lot about we want Pittsburgh to be more walkable, downtown for sure, but also other areas, so other commercial areas and new neighborhoods. And there's this principle of the 3 Ds that lead to walkability. One is density. If you have more things closer together, the area is going to be more walkable. Think about the most walkable places you know of, like downtown Pittsburgh or somewhere else. It is not the Walmart by the highway with, you know, a building way over here and a building way over here, right? You could walk between those buildings, but it's really hard. Not a lot of people do it. So density, and also, you know, just people, you know, having more people closer to commercial opportunities, restaurants, shops, that sort of thing. There's more likely to generate walk trips. Diversity. So diversity of uses. So you know, instead of just having, you know, all our residential over on this side of town and all our commercial on this side of town, which is kind of what was the thinking back in the 1970s, when we were trying to design towns and keep things that were, you know, potentially conflicting separate. We're kind of changing the way that we think about things, and we want diversity. We want things that are compatible closer together, you know, in terms of even shops and residential like that. The diversity of those things and encouraging a mix of those things and identifying barriers to that true mixed use development is something that we're rethinking. Design of development. You know, if you put a sidewalk somewhere, you can build that sidewalk a number of different ways. You can design that sidewalk a number of different ways. If it is 3 foot wide and right up next to a 60-mile-an-hour highway, well, the design of that is not really conducive to people walking. Right? You're not going to want to walk along that stretch of roadway. But if you set it back from the roadway, if you do some trees in between the sidewalk and the roadway, it's of adequate width, so it's shaded. You know, you have benches, all these things are design related, but they actually, support walkable areas, crossings, like having crosswalks and that sort of thing. So design is also important. So supporting walkability in different ways. There's a lot more detail in the plan. About housing, I mean, we talk about some ways in the plan to remove barriers to infill development and some missing middle housing types. The missing middle housing types is just things that are not quite big apartments and not quite single family homes on big lots, right? The missing middle, including, attached homes and triplexes and stuff like that, we're missing that in our housing stock because we haven't really built a lot of that stuff since the 1950s or 60s. That's because of zoning kind of prohibited everything except for apartments and single family homes. But there's a lot of opportunity there for, for sale or for rent product that appeals to a lot of different age groups and family types. And that's something that we want to get more of in the right places in the town. But also, it's about that scale and what's appropriate in different neighborhoods. So preserving the character of neighborhoods is also important. We talk about that. These are just some residential development preference images from the public meeting that people said they generally liked. So we had some stuff that was a lot bigger, but these are the kind of scale mixed use buildings with live work units that folks wanted. Townhomes and attached residential that was a little smaller, multiplex apartments that are not 4 stories tall. Mixed residential at single family scale, so pocket neighborhoods and smaller lot stuff, and then accessory dwelling units. This is something that is a way to encourage what they call gentle density, where you allow for someone to put an accessory dwelling unit if they have a big enough property and can fit it. And that's a way to encourage, keeping the scale of the neighborhood and character of neighborhood, but allowing a couple, different kinds of units in there. And those can really be attractive to young professionals, teachers, older folks as well. So that's just some things that, we talk about in the plan. Downtown, we talk about a lot. Update of the downtown vision plan is needed. It's been a number of years since it's been updated, and a lot has happened. And like this, the announcement that the county is moving their offices out west of town. So that's going to be a whole quadrant of downtown that we really need to think about and how it fits into the whole. Attracting new businesses downtown. Infrastructure upgrades. We heard a lot from the steering committee about the need for water sewer upgrades downtown to support the kind of development we want to see. But then also streets. Hillsborough is nice. It could be reconfigured a bit potentially to add a little bit more width in terms of sidewalk, make it a little bit easier to get around. But really, the side streets are an opportunity. In some places, you have sidewalks, and in some places you don't. In some places you have curb and gutter, in some places it's just a very narrow road with a swale section. And if we want to encourage development in our downtown to grow, then some of those streets need to change. They can work more for the town. We could have better sidewalk connections. Some of those streets might be appropriate for on-street parking. Parking is always going to be an issue, and if your downtown continues to be successful, it's going to be an issue. So, we need to make those streets work better for us. Form-based design, so thinking about design and character of new development, but we don't need to be too stringent. We actually need to be a little flexible in some cases to allow innovations. It's something that we heard a lot about. We don't want necessarily everything to be cookie cutter. Pittsburgh is not a cookie cutter place. You all are kind of a little different, a little funky, and that's okay. So let's allow some innovation there. In new and improved public spaces, we have there were some plans that were made in the downtown vision plan. Those need to be updated, refined, including understanding of some of those big moving parts and how they fit in, like potential moving some county services west of town. Sewer capacity is something that we talked about a lot at the steering committee level. This is a priority to address the sewer capacity situation. I'm sure you all are aware. and the BOC is also aware, considering additional fees for fund utility expansion, utilizing the future land use map to estimate future demand for water and sewer, and continuing planning for it. Sidewalk, greenways, and trails is also something we talked about a lot. Greenways, we have a lot of plans that show where we want greenways, but after the sewer situation, we kind of need to make greenways a priority, getting greenways on the ground a priority, because there's a lot of opportunities for key connections to Chatham Park, to the Haw River, to other parks, even west of town, along Robeson Creek, that would really add value to the town and quality of life and provide recreation opportunities, that sort of thing. Stormwater, including green stormwater infrastructure, which is things like bias wells, rain gardens, and green roofs that can help reduce impacts of new urban development on water quality. Infrastructure on the transportation side of things as well, coordinate the design of planned roadway projects. We did update some of the line work, but the full update of the town's comprehensive transportation plan in conjunction with Chatham County and DOT is needed. And during that, looking at intersection improvements, looking at long-term right-of-way that's needed is recommended. A couple things that we do want to call out. NC 87, it is going to function as the de facto truck route for the near future, and it should to get some trucks out of downtown. But there might need to be some improvements to intersections and roadway sections to accommodate freight traffic. US 64 business east and west of downtown. We need to look at that and see ways to improve it for access management to reduce safety concerns, improve kind of the visual aesthetics of that corridor, and then pedestrian and bicycle safety. So that's kind of your roadway system map. That's what it's saying. We did receive a grant from the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission, a Partnership with Green Growth grant. So we were able to include a conservation element, natural resource and conservation element in the plan. This identifies priority natural resources and includes recommendations to protect them. Talks about things like the benefits of riparian buffers, other priority habitats that occur in the town limits and the ETJ, and then also some of the wildlife that frequents those things, the species of concern, and some conservation recommendations. Brooke Massa, who's a wildlife biologist with the North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission, helped us out with this, and we have a lot of good information in the plan and some recommendations that can really relate to the design of new development in certain areas and make it a little bit greener and a little bit more environmentally friendly. A couple things like preserving high quality habitat and incentivizing conservation design as opposed to conventional design. Conventional design, you just lot out the land and plan maybe a little bit of parks or green space, but conservation design really prioritizes conserving natural resources on site and clusters development away from that. Right now, your code is a little bit ambiguous related to conservation subdivisions, and we suggest updating that and incentivizing it. And we've talked with staff about some ways to do that. And, we think it could be a win-win situation for natural resources and also for flexibility for landowners and developers. Maintaining and improving water quality, stormwater is really big. It's going to be something that needs to be addressed long-term. Open space connections and greenway connections, I talked about those. And conservation of heritage trees and encouraging native plants and new developments also recommended as part of this plan. We have some natural resources conservation target areas that are shown that just talk about some of the special things in different parts of town. And these are some areas that we can allow and incentivize conservation design everywhere, but especially in these areas, we want to do it. So hopefully this is a little opportunity for folks to get to know, what's in different parts of the study area. So that's kind of my short overview of what's in the plan. Happy to answer questions about specifics in the plan, what's in there, what's not in there, and any clarification that you would like me to provide.
Well, Jack, thanks for a very thoughtful presentation. Board members, what questions would you like to put to Jake?
Hi, Jake. I have a question about the greenways. As we're looking at different developers propose their neighborhoods and their developments, are we looking for them to be kind of hashing out where the greenways would be? Or is that, maybe this is a question for Jamie, or is that something that the town would do and then the developers are developing around those kinds of systems?
Well, I can take that and answer a little bit, and feel free to chime in, Janie. You all do have a couple plans that show proposed greenways. The Parks and Recreation Plan is a pretty comprehensive look at planned greenways. And then you also have a pedestrian plan as well that shows some. Now, typically what happens is, those are big picture greenways. Those are like almost your greenway spines, let's say. And it doesn't necessarily mean it has to go exactly as shown on that map, but it's representative of a connection. So there should be a connection provided in that area in new development, or at least an easement, for future connection in some form or fashion. But it might go by the creek and then come up by this road and be like a wide, sidewalk or multi-use path for a section before it goes back on the creek. That's fine, but the connection, should be there. But typically what happens with this is, ideally there would also be like smaller connections that could be public or private connections that are sidewalk connections, or short sections of trail or greenway that connect residents from the new development to that greenway. Because it's not really helpful if there's just a segment of greenway in the back of the neighborhood and there's no connections to it, right, from that new development. So it's a little bit of both. The town has a role to play, including helping with funding some key segments of spine greenway and some infrastructure too, like bridges or something like that. But the private development has a role to play too, and that could include some of those shorter connections, sections of public greenway, and getting folks to the greenway.
Okay, and my follow-up question is, which comes first? Because you said that some of the bigger systems are already laid out. So when developers are showing us their plan, like if that greenway hasn't, or that portion of greenway hasn't been made yet, for example, by the town, then would we still be looking for them to provide the connection first, or is that something that they would do after the main arteries are laid down?
Charity, I think I'll jump in here and say that, what we're going to be considering in our vote tonight is whether or not this draft of the Pittsboro land use update document goes on to the town board for their approval. And then once that's done, this becomes the touchstone for us going forward to hold developers' feet to the fire. We say, okay, here's our vision for the next 10 or 20 years. And we want greenways, and we want access to recreation, and we want walkability and all the other virtues that Jake outlined. And this becomes the foundation going forward, if the town board approves, for us to base our decisions on consistency.
Yeah,
Right.
I
I mean, this plan is recommending prioritizing completion of those greenways, and it is going to take everybody involved. It's going to take private development to do their part. Now, what that part is, it's really, what you have in your code in terms of what you require. At the very least, it should be an easement, but ideally they would build part of it too. So I think it depends what comes first. If the spine is already in place, they would connect to it. But potentially even building parts of that, spine network would be an ideal condition, but it comes down to what's required and what the board of commissioner requires during development approval and that sort of thing.
And I think too, we can
Thank
say
you.
that developers are going to be looking at this document before they bring proposals to Pittsboro. They're going to know what our goals and aspirations and values are based upon this framework.
Sure. I was just curious how it all worked. So got it. Thanks.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. Thank you. Any other questions for Jake before I ask for a motion? There being no further questions, can I hear a motion to either approve or reject this Pittsboro land use plan update that we've
I'll
been
motion
looking
to
at?
approve.
Excuse me, Eric.
Yes, Ray.
I was muted. I was gonna.
Oh, sure.
A second.
Thank
How
you.
does the land use plan affect the town of Pittsboro? Because it was presented within this plan. Like, last time I think you and I were there, we were talking to the town manager, there's no
Yeah.
money for sidewalks.
Yeah, yeah.
So, why was that included in this presentation?
Well, I think, it becomes an objective goal, and this becomes guidance for the town board of what we want and expect going forward. It doesn't actually define the sidewalks or bicycle paths or walking trails as such, but sets out the vision of what they ought to be. So as development comes along, or we rezone a patch of land, we know what the objectives are going to be. Excellent question, though. So I think I've heard a motion and a second.
Who was second? I didn't hear the second.
All right, do I hear a second? I think Charity, you were the one that made the motion, is that right?
Yes.
Charity made the motion. Do I hear a second before we proceed to a vote?
I think Bill was trying to talk, but I think.
Oh, hi, Bill. Bill, I see you're muted, but I see your handsome face there. Hold the space bar down on your computer when you're talking, kind of like a CD radio microphone. No, you're still not coming through.
Muted.
Yeah, you're still muted. Try the key combination Alt with the letter A. That might unmute you. Alt with the letter A. No go. Oh, I'm sorry, Bill. We can't hear you.
Bill, you can type a question in the chat.
Jake just put up a little question box on your screen there, Bill. If you want to type a question or a comment into that little pop-up box that came up on the bottom of your screen with Jake's name on it. Well, Bill has gone dark. But I believe we still have a quorum, even if we can't record Bill's vote tonight. Elfrida, you're still with us, aren't you? Hello.
Yeah, I don't see her on the panel.
I don't either. I didn't see her name pop up there. Bill, it looks like you're unmuted. Bill, it looks like you're unmuted now. Can you give us a testing?
I second the motion.
Thank you, Bill. We have your
Can you hear
second. We have Charity's motion, Bill's second. May I call for a vote now? All in favor of advancing the Pittsboro land use plan update to the town board? Say so. Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? It passes unanimously, and so it goes on to the town board for the town board's consideration. Planning department updates. We have a few, but I wanted to just publicly congratulate the planning staff. Janie gave me a tour of the new offices, which are in the what do we call it? The Main Street Station, is that right? And on the second floor next to the YMCA, and really a handsome operation, and I know it's really tough to get up and move an office. I've done those a few times, and so I congratulate everybody on having that done efficiently and creating really an attractive new working environment for the planning department. Which comes around to an announcement that Janie was going to make regards the conference room there and how we might in fact return to in-person meetings.
Yeah, and first off, thanks Jake for doing the presentation, and to all of the team for putting all of that together. They worked really hard, harder than we did, I'm sure. So we get to implement something that's really great. So thank you. Did you have anything else to add, Jake or Meg?
No, just thank y'all for forwarding it, and look forward to conversations with the BOC, and hopefully the staff will be bringing some things back to you to help implement.
Yeah, I would echo that. Thank you so much.
You're here.
So obviously we had another prime example in this meeting where there have been increasing tech issues, and there's been some discussion internally and looking at some blogs that SFG has been putting out. And since the governor lifted the state of emergency last year, I believe, there's still some confusion about appointed boards, if they're required to go back in person or not. Even in the blog, it says that there's some confusion. So I know that we've brought it up before, and we do have space for everyone and even for the public to come in with the way that we can set up our conference room. And we did some sound tests as well. So without like a microphone, we ultimately want to get a microphone just to make it a lot more clear. But just wanted to bring it up to you all that we may need to go back in person. It would probably be easiest for record keeping. And staff also realizes that by doing that, we already have to, if you do all want to do that, we already have to amend the calendar, because it says on there that they're being held through Zoom. So that will have to go to the board, but also by going back in person, that may change the time. So that's something for you all to discuss. We know that there are some issues. If we have to go back to 7 o'clock, we have to go back to 7. It'd be nice if even we could go at 6:30 or something. But just wanted your input so that we can potentially make changes.
And I guess it's fair to say, Janie, right, that it's not entirely this board's decision. The planning board has to make, or rather the planning board's plans have to be approved by the town board, correct?
They do. So it would be adopting a new calendar for the remainder of the year.
So this would mean modifying the schedule that was previously circulated to everyone. So all I can say is there's plenty of parking and it's a nice facility, so I would not mind going back to meet there. Excuse me. Any other board discussion? Excuse me, if not, do I hear?
I think Charity just unmuted herself.
Okay.
But she's frozen.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Well, we did.
Do you want to discuss right now what the new schedule looks like? Sorry, can you guys hear me?
We can hear you now, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Janie, did you want us to discuss like what times would be suitable for us right now?
Yeah, so if we ended up going back in person, if you're all able to leave it at 6 o'clock, then that's great. Really, you can opt to meet anytime. If you wanted to meet at like 10 a.m. on the first Monday of the month, you can do that, or you can push it back to 7. which there have been some there has been some movement with the sewer situation, so we have a little bit better picture on that. But it's still not as far up in the air. It's coming down in altitude. But yeah, you need to discuss going back in person and then the time that would work.
Okay, so for me, I'm happy to go back in person, but I couldn't get there at 6. It would need to be 6:30 at the earliest, or I could do something daytime, but I guess 6:30 would be, that's my vote.
Yeah, I'm fine with 6:30 or 7. Excuse me, all of those work for me. Bill, what about you? And Ray, what do you think about changing the time or going back to in-person meetings?
I'm very flexible.
Thanks, Ray.
Easy for the rest.
Okay, thank you. Bill, how do you feel?
In person's fine with me anytime.
Okay. All right, well then we'll we'll leave it to Fake and the town board, and you may well be getting a notice that next month we'll once again get to see each other's smiling faces in person.
So I'll amend the calendar to change the location, and it'll be
Okay.
our room at our office. And even though it's on the 2nd floor, there is an elevator as well, so you'll be able to use that. And also, it sounds like 6:30 should be suitable.
Yeah, I think that's fine. That's a good compromise. I would be on board with that.
Okay.
So
So
when we plan on that, going to an in-person meeting next month at 6:30 in the brand spanking new offices at the Main Street Station in the beautiful historic downtown Pittsburgh.
Yeah, so let's go ahead. We can do a vote. It'll be keeping the same dates, obviously, but just changing the location and the time.
Right, absolutely. Well, thanks, Janie. Do we have any other planning department updates to read into the minutes?
Yeah, we need to vote on the calendar.
Oh, vote on the calendar. All right. Do we have a motion to approve this change to the calendar? Going to 6:30 with in-person meetings at the planning board office conference room. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Prior to that, Eric,
Bill moves. Who seconds?
I'll
Eric,
second.
Yeah, Ray.
do we need to notify the other 2 members that are, because Afria's not here now? or-
Well, what do you think, Janie? Do we need to have a consensus of the 2 absent board members?
You have a quorum.
We have a quorum, so the power's in our hands, Ray. We can wield the power of our vote, and I'll call for. Did I get a second to Bill's motion?
Charity
I
seconded.
second.
Already seconded. Thank you very much. So all in favor of the modification of our meeting calendar for the remainder of this year, say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? So we have a unanimous approval of this modification to our calendar, and Janie will shoot out new calendar information to all the members, including those who are not here. Any other board comments before I ask for a motion to adjourn? There being none, I'll move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
Thanks, Bill. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 It appears to be unanimous. Thanks very much, everybody. We'll see you next month, and it'll be fun to do it in person. Good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.